raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
Hey, we are going to jump right into another enlightening episode of Men Talking Mindfulness. Our guest today, Michael E. Long, the co-author of The Molecule of More, How a Single Chemical in Your Brain, that's Michael over there, how a single chemical in your brain drives love, sex, and creativity and will determine the fate of the human race. The other author, Dr. Daniel Z. Lieberman, MD, cannot be joining us today, but we have Michael here. Here's a passage from their book. To start things off. From dopamine's point of view, having things is uninteresting. It's only getting things that matter. If you live under a bridge, dopamine makes you want to have a tent. If you live in a tent, dopamine makes you want to have a house. If you live in the most expensive mansion in the world, dopamine makes you want a castle on the moon. Dopamine has no standard for good and seeks no finish line. The dopamine circuit in the brain can be stimulated only by the possibility of whatever is shiny and new, never mind how perfect things are in the moment. The dopamine motto is more. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. In this episode, we're going to get into the captivating world of this powerful neurotransmitter, dopamine, that makes us crave more. From more love to creativity to the pursuit of success, and can also fold you into the pitfalls of addiction. This book presents a compelling case of how dopamine shapes our every action, every thought, emotion, and even our politics. We aim to uncover our understanding of dopamine and how it can empower us to navigate the complexities of our mind and cultivate a greater sense of mindfulness. Thank you, gentlemen. John, good to see you. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think John has a couple things to say, and then we're going to jump right into this conversation.
Well, in the interest of time, I'll keep it somewhat short. We got a new merchandise store opening up soon, so be on the lookout for that. And then if you're interested in hearing your voice on the show, we would love to play your memo, your voice memo, and you can send us a voice memo with questions that we will play and then answer. And you can do that simply by texting the letters MTM to the number 33777. And then lastly, hit us up, subscribe on Instagram and YouTube. We would love to have you guys follow us so that we can spread the impact that we are making with this show. That said, we're going to jump right into our opening practice. As Mike, as I was explaining before we hit record, we bookend this show with an opening practice and a closing practice. So if you're comfortable joining us, we'd love to have you join us, but don't worry, we're not going to have you take off your shirt. So for those tuning in, and for those right here with me right now, Will and Mike, go ahead and get into a comfortable position, whatever that may look like for you, whatever that may feel like for you. And let's just start by bringing our attention to our breath, noticing the rise and fall of our chest and bellies as we breathe in and out. In and out. Holding empty this time. And in. Hold full. And release. Holding empty. And one more deep breath in. Hold. And relax. And as you let that go ahead and start to bring some micro movements into your body, maybe rolling your shoulders, rolling your neck around, wiggling your fingers and your toes. And here we are. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. Will, go ahead, brother, kick it off.
Mike, hey, thank you again so much for joining us today. So what inspired you to dive into the science of dopamine and all of its effect on humanity?
Well, we never have, Dan is my friend, so I'll answer for both of us, and I know he agrees with this. First, thank you guys for having me here. This is one of the most unique podcasts that we've been invited to do. And anything that's united, of course, primarily by mindfulness, but secondarily by the presence of a beard is always a positive thing in the universe. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Yeah, I like that Mr. Ziffel thing going right there. So that's nice. So what was the question? It was, how do we get this deal? Why did we do this?
Yeah.
And I said, this is an unusual answer because we didn't write this initially. We didn't write this because we were fascinated by dopamine. We've been friends at this point for 25 years. And we started this back in 2015, 16. And we wanted to do something that was a little healthier for us besides going and eating lunch all the time. Dan is a psychiatrist. And at the time, he was the assistant chair of the Department of Psychiatry at George Washington University. He teaches psychopharmacology there. I teach at Georgetown as an adjunct. I teach writing and various kinds of writing. And we've just been friends. And we said, we'd love to write a book together. What might it be? And so he started casting about for things because we thought a popular science book about something that hasn't gotten enough attention would matter. And we talk a fair amount. Just before all that, we talk about, I'm being honest with you here. I'm not telling you the happy story. I'm telling you how it really happened. We talked a lot about philosophy, neuroscience, politics. And he showed up one day at lunch. I remember it's a place called Founding Farmers over here about 4 blocks from the White House. And he said, I think I got it. And the man named Fred Previck had written a book about dopamine in the 1970s that began to explore this idea about consumption, about more, consuming. And he said, this is not for lay people, but I think if it were not translated, but if we took these ideas and ran with them. And so, of course, we acknowledge Fred. You've read the book. We acknowledge Fred at the front of this book that's what it is. And that's how it happened. Now, if I may, there you go. Yeah. Available wherever books are sold. Yeah.
Will's holding up the book.
Tell me if my answers are too long. You just jump in any time.
No worries.
But what we did was, see, my buddy, Dan, wanted to write a book, and I'd already kind of been out there doing that. And I said, well, let's do it. So we did not approach this the way you write a book. For those who are listening who know a little about publishing, you write a proposal, you send it out, and you hope someone buys a proposal. And then you wrote the book. We said, well, fuck that. We wanted to write the book ourselves. So we said, we're just going to write the book we want. And if we can sell it, that's wonderful. And if not, we had a good time working it out. Well, we did that. We spent 2 years writing this book with no advance, no promise of a sale, nothing. We just said, this is fun and this is cool. And we sat down like we had a contract and just started figuring it out. And at the end of 2 years, we had this manuscript. And then we went out to agents, and it was sort of like, it was exactly like, friggin' sort of like, it was like. It wasn't even like, it was. I'd write an agent and I'd say, we have this idea for a book, and are you interested in it? And they'd say, well, send a chapter. And we'd send a chapter, and they'd say, well, kind of like that. You want the whole thing? And the long story short, if that's possible at this point, is we got bites immediately. We had responses from agents 24 hours. We had an offer of a deal in 3 days.
Nice.
And we signed a week later with Harvey Klinger Agency in New York. Wonderful, wonderful agency. And then our agents, Wendy and Andrea, took it out. And for 3 months, nothing.
Oh,
Nothing. Nobody wanted it. They said it was too poppy for science books and too sciencey for the popular reader.
oh geez.
Finally, a publisher in Texas picked it up, Ben Bella. We've had a wonderful relationship with Ben Bella. And the rest, as the drive-by truckers sang, as they say, is history. We're in 23 languages now. We've sold about 250,000 copies around the world.
Congratulations.
It's a monster hit. As I was talking to Glenn, my publisher, yesterday, and he said, this is an unusual title for any publisher. The sales have been profound. So that's a publishing story, not a mindfulness story. But
we
say what you want to say. That's what I want to tell you.
And Will and I are in the process of writing our first book right now. It's called Mindfulness for Assholes and Those Surrounded by Them. So hopefully we'll have the same level of success, or a 10th or maybe a 100th of level of your success with that book. So I'd love to talk,
We should talk.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk offline.
We will, Mike. Thanks.
That sounds great. So how does the desire for more, the desire that is triggered by dopamine, shape our everyday decisions? I'll ask that, but I also want to kind of preload it. I was a little saddened when I first read the first few chapters of your book. It talks about dopamine driving what we perceive as love initially, and then how we kind of fall out of love when the dopamine falls out of a relationship. And we'll talk about the here and now hormone later. But the fact that so many of our decisions are driven by a chemical was a little bit saddening to me, right? You kind of think that there's this esoteric motivation that's in us to love someone or to have a drive to do more or whatever, but it's a chemical. So how does that desire for more get shaped by dopamine, and how does it shape our everyday decisions?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, John. So let me start with the last part first. We are not saying there's no such thing as a soul. As Tom Wolfe wrote in the 90s, and as actually said in his famous speech, "Sorry, but your soul just died," at the opening of the great neuroscience boom at that time. We are not for a moment saying there's no soul and that you're a product of your chemicals. Now, if you want to believe that, knock yourself out. But we are saying that we can explain certain currents of behavior in a broad stroke with this compound, or this chemical, with compound, chemical, whatever you want to say. And the thing is we see it, we know it, for instance, because we see what happens when it goes wrong. We can see people with mental illness, and we can say, oh, if we lower this compound's presence in the system, we see an improvement, or improvement in mood or different behavior. I say we, I'm not a physician, but I'm saying it what we as scientists tend to know. So this dopamine does affect how you behave, for sure, but it's not the end of the dualism of a soul and a body. And now the other part of this about how does it affect us day to day? John, you were right on it when you said there's the pleasure of being there in the moment, the pleasure of this tastes so good. When I'm enjoying that, I'm enjoying the feeling of this on my tongue, and I like the way it feels as it goes down my throat, or I look at this pretty surface here on this microphone over here. I'm enjoying it in the moment. It is real-time sensory activation. That's one pleasure. The other kind of pleasure we know as human beings is anticipatory pleasure. So you can think of it as consuming pleasure versus anticipatory pleasure. And the anticipatory pleasure is more intense and briefer. It only lasts when the possibility of something new exists. And we can pull that thread and find out why that is. But if you think about it, every experience you have that's pleasurable is either, I like it, or I wonder what's next.
Right.
And dopamine gives us that desire to move to the next thing, which has evolutionary roots and has value, a profound value, the ultimate value in keeping us alive.
Sure.
The problem comes, and I'll wrap it up with this. The problem comes is this brain evolved for people who live in fields and sleep in caves. We don't have to worry about where the next meal is coming from. We don't have to worry about a tiger racing through here and eating us. That's what dopamine is for. It's to say, ooh, I think I hear a tiger, I better hide. That looks like an interesting read, I better eat it. And now that all that shit's taken care of, well, dopamine has to chew on something, by golly, and it's going to do it. And welcome to the 21st century.
Right. And as you say that, I'm looking at when Will and I started this show, I drove a little yellow Fiat with racing stripes, and I wanted something more. And now I have, a nice truck that I'm looking at through the window here. And I'm like, ooh, there's a truck that's parked right next to mine. That one looks pretty good too. So I see that dopamine desire for more all the time. And I know all our listeners and watchers feel it and see it too. So I just find it, I'm glad. Thank you for coming back and saying that we still have a soul, or we can, if we believe that. So that gives me a little bit of hope. Will, I'll turn it back.
This is just understanding a system where the system itself is undeniable, but a soul is a matter of faith, and that's a different realm.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the.
I'm a writer, but I'm a preacher's kid. So
yeah. Right on. Well, let's get into the science a little bit, as far as this novelty capturing. That's part of like our human spirit, or not the spirit, but just our human biology. And I enjoyed that they call this phenomenon, our constant seeking for novelty and more, is the reward prediction error. What does it mean by this? Like, that's a very heavy term, or just like, very wordy term. Like, break that down for us, please.
Sure. Are you sitting? You're sitting wherever you're sitting. Doesn't matter where you're sitting, Will. If somebody knocks on the door and they go, "Hey, I have a package for you," they yell it through the door. You're like,
yeah.
Cool. You'd be kind of excited.
Are coming.
That's why Amazon is so successful.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That is something we can talk about.
Yeah.
So you got a package. Oh boy. Now let's say every Thursday at roughly noon Eastern time, somebody knocks on your door with a package. Well, you're going to have a little bit less of excitement. And let's say what's in that package. You have a little bit less. Reward prediction error is when it's the difference between what I expect and what happens. So if I don't expect a package to arrive, boom, I'm thrilled. But if I know the package man arrives with my Amazon crap every Thursday, then it's not nearly as exciting. The error in what we predict the reward will be. And the ultimate difference is infinity, because we have no expectation. Like if I expect this to be a good time today with you, which is what I expect, but if I have a friggin' fantastic time, there's a big difference there. That's a reward. That's a difference in the prediction of the reward I will have. And when you go to Amazon, that's why I don't pick an Amazon day of the week. I say, get it here when you can, because then I'll hear that knock. Oh, here it is. That's a good surprise.
Right.
That's fun.
Yeah. That's my kids. Every time we get an Amazon package, no matter what. I mean, it could be, I don't know, dishwasher soap. When that Amazon box arrives, they get so excited. But then, man, that reward prediction error is really bad when I open it up and it's dishwasher soap.
Let me tell you how ingrained this is in us, to the point we don't even fucking know. Okay? We're going to talk about, you'll never guess, musical theater. Okay?
Awesome.
You ever see, I see your enthusiasm, Will. I appreciate it.
No, I am.
Really solid musical theater. Have you ever seen The Music Man?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, you just pretend you have. That's okay. You haven't seen it. I know you haven't. You're lying, but it's okay. Okay. There's a song in it called "The Wells Fargo Wagon." It is sung by Ron Howard, who was a child actor. Yeah. And here is, because I don't want you to pay for clearance, I'm just going to tell you some of the lyrics. They're anticipating around 1900. They're anticipating the Wells Fargo wagon coming into town to bring all the stuff from other places. And they don't know exactly when it's going to get there, but the whole friggin' town is standing here waiting for it. And Ron Howard's line is, it could be that they're all saying what might be in it. And then the climax of the song is Ron Howard says, it could be something for someone who is no relation, or it could be something special just for me. And they're standing there like this. That is dopamine. That is reward prediction error, and it's so much a part of how we behave moment to moment. If the possibility, the remotest possibility exists that something is cool and it's coming our way, we're ready. We're ready, and we'll tear down anything to get to it. Why do you think men do stupid things to get to women?
Right.
She could be the one. It could be awesome.
Yeah, and it could be another conquest as well, right? I mean, depending on how you view your relationship,
whatever your
right?
deal is, you know. Right. But yeah, I mean, and it works for women too. That way, there are other hormones, other neurotransmitters involved, obviously. Sure. But that's the thing: is I could be surprised by something better than I expected. And as soon as you have that thing, and this is important too. As soon as the thing arrives, dopamine goes clunk. It's over. And the only pleasure you have is the having of the thing. A good way to think about, and we're working on a sequel, by the way. I'll have a sequel out in next spring, actually. Next summer, spring. Anyway, think of walking down the street like you're in the Village in New York. Okay, you're walking in the Village there, McDougal, and you're walking past restaurants. There's the guy out there. There's several comedy clubs over there in McDougal. And there's a guy standing up front going, "Hey, come see the show, man. Come see the show. Come to the cellar or come around the other room there around the corner. This is going to be a great show, great show." He doesn't fucking know. All he does is he just says, "This is going to be great. You're going to love it. You're going to have such a good time." And when you get in there and you've paid your money, he's nowhere to be found. Either the show is good or the show is not. That's dopamine. Dopamine is the guy on the street going, "Boy, you want this. You better do everything you can to get it." But when you get inside, the carnival barker is gone, the street guy is gone, dopamine is gone, and it either is good or it is not good. But dopamine he's catching the smoke down the street at this point.
Well, with that in mind, and what I mentioned before about, the dopamine kind of driving that initial feeling of love, but really it's more almost infatuation. And then arriving at the relationship. Now we know what it is. Can you explain more about dopamine's role in forming that relationship? And then how do we maintain those romantic relationships, right? I'm talking about the here and now hormones and, passionate love relationship versus the companionate relationship. Can we talk about that?
Sure. And first, let's note which you wouldn't be aware of, but let's note the absolute ridiculous irony of saying Mike Long explained love. That's just a dumb place to begin right off. But no, you're right on the mark, John. You're absolutely on the mark. I have it written down. Am I getting it right? John, light blue shirt or blue shirt right. And glasses. Oh, fuck.
You're nailing it.
Will has the big beard. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Just make sure I wasn't calling you reverse. All right. There are two parts. Let's think about it purely from a dispassionate, perspective. There is the as you say, the romantic part of love, and there's the companionate part of love. And we know, for instance, in the book, we say that we mentioned that. Sorry to say Al Gore. That's not it. I mean Mick Jagger.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they're very similar. I can't get no satisfaction, right?
You can see. I can't get no satisfaction. I have 10 years before the world ends to get my satisfaction. Yeah. Mick Jagger said, in late middle age, he said he'd been with 4,000 women. We're pretty clear from that this is a guy not into companionate love. This is a guy into dopaminergic love, which is that first part where you see somebody across the room and you go, I bet that's the one. I would love to meet her. I'd love to know her. I'd love to be with her, whatever it is. And that is pure dopamine driven by reward prediction error. You don't know how good that's going to be. It could be something special just for me. You don't know what it is. So you meet her, and as soon as you know just her name, as soon as you've been around her for a second, that dopamine ticks down just a little bit because some of the mystery is gone. And we say, let's go out on a date. At the end of that first date, there's certainly romantic feelings. I'm setting those aside in terms of sort of a hormonal sexual thing. But I'm saying as time proceeds, you know more about this person and less unknown about this person. So the romantic part of it begins to fade. And at some point, you have to make a decision. Am I going to allow myself to get bored with this? Or am I going to decide to engage in the here and now? In other words, this is neuroscientifically why love is ultimately a choice and not a feeling. You have to decide, I will now choose to be with this person. I will make a life with this person. I will seek out the sensory pleasure of being with this person, of sitting next to them, of holding their hand, of asking what they think about this, that, or the other thing. I'll enjoy in the moment as opposed to the romance, which is driven by mystery. That's the big switch. And all of us, we say in the book that love is like a merry-go-round at the foot of a bridge. You either get on the merry-go-round and ride, or you get off at one time and you cross the bridge to another way to live. So we really are. I think we can more easily, especially young people who are trying to find relationships, it's much easier, I think, to ride that tiger of passion if you understand that it's your choice. It's your choice. What do you want now? There's nothing wrong with going from person to person as long as you're not abusing their feelings or misleading them.
Right.
But if you're in business to find somebody to spend a life with, then you must recognize that the feelings I have today are not going to be the feelings I have tomorrow, next week, next month, next year.
That's very important to understand that going in, because so many people, when they go into a relationship, expect that's the feeling they're going to feel the entire time. And then as soon as they do not, that's when they get off that merry-go-round, right? And they don't understand it. They're like, oh, well, it's something that changed in them. They're I don't know, they're not the person that I expected them to be. Well, maybe they're not, but it's also that you no longer have that dopamine driving your passionate love, and now you got to get into the companionate love. So, Will,
and that's why the answer is not, we'll just make a relationship new over and over and over again.
Right.
That's a good idea, but it's not the nut of the idea. The nut of the idea is, I choose you. If you think of a wedding, there's a moment, or a wedding ceremony, and there's a moment where you say, I do.
Right.
I do. I choose you. That's a big thing.
Absolutely. Massive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it kind of brings me to this idea that I really enjoyed you making the distinction in the book of desire dopamine versus control dopamine. Whereas like the desired dopamine is just more and more and more. It's just like we're just filling ourselves with more desire and more consuming more things, whether it's people or food or whatever experiences. Whereas like controlled dopamine kind of, and I was glad it made me feel good, John, to realize that there is a control mechanism in this that allows us to just kind of put the brakes on a little bit and help us to realize like what we actually do have. So bring us through that distinction, Mike, would be very helpful, just to kind of understand that we're not just at the whim of this desire dopamine all the time, but there is a control mechanism that's part of us as well.
Sure. Well, first, there are actually three kinds of dopamine, three systems, but we only talk about two in our book. As you say, there's desire, there's control. There's also one that affects motion. And that's why you hear about Parkinson's disease and dopamine in the same stories. We have feeds that we follow as we prepare for our stuff, and we get a lot of Parkinson's stories because they mention dopamine. But that doesn't have so much to do with our mood issues that we're talking about here. So the difference between desire and control, I'll tell you this. I haven't told this to anybody. I'll tell it to you guys. That's the truth. I haven't told this, and I may get in a little trouble for it. But in the in the book, in the first draft of the book, first, second, third, we had to take it out at the end. There was a story in there that explained the difference between desire and control. And it's just an old joke. And so forgive me in advance, those who I shouldn't, who don't want me to tell this. There's two cowboys sitting on a hill. I'm sorry, there's two horses up on a hill. And down in the valley below, there's a bunch of ponies down there. And one horse says to the other, let's run down there and fuck one of those ponies. And the other goes, no, let's walk down there and fuck them all. And that's my dirty horse joke for you there. But I don't know. From the look on your face, maybe you don't see what I'm getting at here. Desire dopamine says, more, now.
Right.
Control dopamine says, I'm going to help you figure out what you want to do. I'm going to give you the skill to do these things. And so desire is the motivator. Desire dopamine is the motivator. Control dopamine is the executor. It's the thing that says, let me give you, or let me do for you. Let me help you imagine what you might do to get the things desire tells you want. If you, and this is true no matter what. This is why we talk about the peripersonal and the extrapersonal space. Anything that's right here, I can control. I can pick up my earpod case. I can pick up this glasses cleaner. I can pick up this little box here. All these things are in my space, and I don't have to plan to get them very much. But anything, like there's my dog on my chair over there. If I want to go pet my dog or sit in my chair, or if I want to fly to the moon, anything that's beyond this immediate area here takes time and distance. And to overcome time and distance takes planning. And that's what controlled dopamine does. It gives you the ability not only to do that, but also to do it in a more romantic way, we might put it, which is it allows us to do time travel, mental time travel. We can imagine alternative futures for ourselves, which is just a very fancy way of saying, I wonder if that will taste good. Well, gee, it has a skull and crossbones on it. I shouldn't eat it. That's a kind of mental that. Or when you talked about, John, you talked about buying a car. You engaged in mental time travel. Sure. You imagine a future with one truck. You imagine a future with another truck. You imagine a future with another. That's all control. That's not all, but that's controlled dopamine. So you see how they work together. Desire dopamine is like, ooh, I'm tired of the truck I have now. I'd like to have a new truck. And control says, well, let's figure out how to get you there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like that control is like the modulator. It's like, hey, yeah, we're gonna get that, but we're gonna take our time and be strategic. And like we're preparing for the show. I'm like writing all these questions and thinking of what it's gonna look like in the future, what it's gonna sound like, and here it is happening. But it's like it takes the control, and not just John and I are not just like word salad, if you will, use that word in the book. To just like
that's in the book. We can talk about that.
I know. Yeah, what we. But it's like, here we are in this moment, but we controlled, read the book and, we're really excited to talk to you, but we, took our time to prepare for the show today. And that's the control, the modulator. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to be sure not only a modulator is one way to think of it, I want to make certain that I'm clear that this is a how-to thing. This is sort of like, you could think of like the executive function of the brain. Well, let's not even do that. Let's not go there. Let's say that, if I say I want to mow my yard and then I hire, a kid to do it, that kid's going to figure out how to do it. That kid is controlled dopamine. I'm desired dopamine. I sure would like to have a short yard. And the kid's like, I'm going to figure out how to get you that. So he gets his lawnmower out and all that. Controlled dopamine is the calculator. It is the thing that executes the action. So you can imagine why, in broad strokes, again, why there's also a third one, which has to do with physical motion. Sure, it's involved in dopamine as well. It is. If we can say there's one neurotransmitter, and I always clear this up because it was difficult for me to understand. First, when I say neurotransmitter, I'm talking about a chemical, a neurotransmitter. We can understand why we say, with some justification, that dopamine is the most influential moment-to-moment neurotransmitter in the brain.
Wow. Yeah, and it's only such a small part of our brain chemistry as well, right? It's like, one, like a tiny bit, but it drives so much of our behavior all the time. Yeah. Yeah. How does yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, I'd love to talk, you touched on it, right? When we were ancient cavemen and women, or, when we were roaming around and we found a reed that looked good and we were like, hey, I'm going to chew on that. But how has the pursuit of more, which, as we've touched on already, that drives or has been driven by dopamine, how has that influenced the course of human history?
It is all of human history.
Wow.
If we didn't have dopamine, I mean, really, I'm not saying that for effect. I'm saying this is how we do it. This is how it works. If you were happy with whatever you have, we would still be living in a cave. This is why. I'll use this as a jump. This is why competition is important in an economy. If there is no allowance for someone to say, I see a better way, and to act on it, there's no progress.
Right.
When I first came to Washington, I used to be a coder, by the way. I wrote code for about 10 years. I was trained as a physicist. I wrote code for about 10 years before I became a full-time writer. And I remember coming up here to Washington, and let's stick back with where we were. I'm not going to indulge myself. Go ahead.
We don't mind if you indulge, but go ahead, John.
Yeah, we were just talking about the human history and how it is the advancement. Yeah. I
was kind of running down a little personal alley there, but what I want to say is that if you didn't have a desire for more, not just, and see, this is, you've heard before you read our book, you probably heard of dopamine as the molecule of happiness. And that's one of the reasons we wrote it, is we said, that's so wrong. And you gentlemen could say it as well as I can at this point. It is in no way the molecule of happiness. It is just, give me something else. And if that weren't there, we wouldn't seek progress. All progress is born of dissatisfaction.
Right.
Think about that. All progress comes from someone saying, this is not good enough, or simply, this is not enough. This is not enough. And that's where everything happens. We wouldn't have, like I was going to say, I'll just tell you what it was. When I came to Washington, one of the first things I worked on in public relations in advocacy was about the settling on a browser for computers. If you're old like I am, you remember that there was Netscape and Microsoft something or other, and it was, we're going to have to set a federal standard for this because there can only be one because it's too confusing. And I was working on the side of, maybe we'll just let computer programmers figure this out and offer us many choices. And there were a lot of people who said, no, it's too complicated. We can't do that. Well, if that side had won, we might not be having this conversation as easily as we are today, because the answer was, let everybody figure it out for their own. Let them pick the browser they want. And by doing that, the browsers that existed in those days are gone.
Right.
They don't exist. So you want to see progress as the pursuit of more. There it is right now. Everybody who's listening to this is a beneficiary of the dopaminergic driven pursuit of more in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's
and that's just one example.
Right.
Yeah.
The old saying, what was it? Necessity drives invention, or necessity drives creation.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention.
That's it.
Yes.
I think it's wrong.
And the father is a guy named Floyd. I don't know why that is, but
Floyd. Who the fuck is Floyd?
Exactly. Nobody knows.
I think, immaculate conception of invention. But I think where I was going with that is
questions of science
is that it's dopamine is the father, right, of invention. It's like, hey, we actually. We see a need and a desire to do more, and that drives that creation and drives those inventions in addition to the necessity. And sometimes necessity drives.
I'll go with that. Yeah. Everything we have starts with somebody isn't happy.
Right.
And that's why happiness is that's always that. Happiness is the carrot at the end of the pole in front of the pony. But dopamine, the difference with us as human beings, Yeah. That is so good. That is so good. That's exactly right. The different, as humans, the thing is we get to chew on the carrot once in a while, and then we see another carrot, and we go like that.
Right.
So it's a wonderful. It's kind of like you're a Family Guy when they're trying to treat James Woods to go down the street. They left a trail of candy. Go, ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. Behold, man's history.
I love that you referenced Family Guy. My wife's going to listen to this episode now. I love it. Will, I know you've got a very intriguing question about politics, which we'll be talking about here in a couple of weeks on the show, and mindfulness in politics. You want to talk about the election season?
Yeah. I mean,
no. Will's gonna ask you how dopamine.
I got
don't do that to me.
Well, no, I thought it was. As I kept reading, the book, I really suggest everyone read the book. I mean, really, really fascinating read. I mean, I love the stories in the book, and you just keep going deeper into the makeup of our humanity and our society and the choices that we're making. And then sure enough, towards the end of the book, like you're getting into, or not, I guess the middle, like into our politics of conservative versus liberal, and how liberals we're more inclined to succumb to the molecule of more. Break that down for us. Like, why are liberals, why we, go ahead, dive in, please.
Thanks.
So my question,
my own throat. That'll be fine. Well, this is the chapter that we had to that we had the most debate with about our publisher, because we were trying so hard to, and we all have our political beliefs, but we don't want anybody to feel like we're saying they're predetermined by your chemicals, because they're not. We don't want anybody to come away from this and say, well, one side is smarter than the other, because that's not the thing. I'd say it starts with the notion of the nature of believing. And let's not talk about it in terms of liberal and conservative, because those terms don't quite mean what the words mean. Liberal talks about a lot of individual liberty, but that's also people who tend to be quote unquote liberal are also greatly in favor of state power as well. So there's kind of a statism that's attached to individual liberty in those cases as well. And conservatives aren't necessarily about conserving what has been in every case. So those words are kind of misleading. But what we can say is that people who tend toward the liberal side of things are seeking change.
Right.
So we find that in broad strokes, people who tend toward the political left tend to have higher levels of dopamine. They are driven to be a little more inquisitive and seeking of the new. That's why, for instance, we find so many artists are on the left. They tend to have higher levels of dopamine, and that causes them to seek something new. One definition of creativity, which I found very useful as somebody who writes not only nonfiction, but writes a fair number of stage plays and stories, is that creativity is the combination, or the combining, I should say, to be precise, the combining of things that are not normally combined.
Yeah, there you go.
Kind of a new thing. So you think of, if I think of, well, in the book, I keep coming back to the great examples there. Brian Wilson, I'm a huge fan of the Beach Boys. And one of the things I love about Brian Wilson is he just put together things that had never been put together. If you listen to Good Vibrations, for instance, it's been in our ears for 50 years. We don't think much about it, but go back and listen. You'll discover, for instance, there is a theremin played in it. Up until that point in 1967, I want to say, a theremin was used exclusively in horror movies to make sound effects.
Yeah, right.
Brian Wilson said, let's put it in a pop song. If you'll also listen closely, you'll hear that it is broken up into 3 movements, like classical music. He combined things that had not been combined before. And that's something a highly dopaminergic person would do, to seek out the new. And one kind of new is the combination of things that haven't been combined before. And that extends to politics. If we want to divide liberalism as the seeking for new or better or superior or at least different. With the assumption it'll be better, versus those on the right who say, let's enjoy the things we have and preserve them. Now, we all have a little from column A and a little from column B, so we cannot draw complete conclusions. We can't predict somebody's political leanings, but we can say that these things tend to have an influence in some people a little, in some people a lot.
Well, you bring up the Beach Boys, and it's Pet Songs. Is that the name of the album? I think is that right?
The name of the album is Pet Sounds. That was such a breakthrough.
Pet Sound.
Yes,
Pet Sounds. Yeah, and I've heard that. I mean, I like to study music a little bit and just like the influences of music. And that album alone is so groundbreaking that it is mentioned by so many other artists of being a tremendous influence on them because of the creativity you're talking about, because they're combining two different things that seemingly have no relationship in music, and then they put it into a song and they just like crack a new code. And here we are talking about it. I mean, so there it is. Yeah.
Well, when you say groundbreaking, you're really hitting it, because it doesn't sound so groundbreaking today because everybody's mined it for 50 years.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't popular. Yeah, it wasn't popular when it came out. It's not a rock album. It takes pop motifs and connects them. The song that again, I'm digging in personally, but Winchester Cathedral was the number one song the week before Good Vibrations, which is not on Pet Sounds, but it serves to deliver the point. I mean, you want to have one of these about Pet Sounds? I'll talk about fucking Pet Sounds for hours. It's genius. I mean, think about the first line of that wonderful song, God Only Knows. The title itself, that's something you didn't hear a lot on the radio. The word God used it all. 1967. The first line of the love song, God Only Knows. You know what the first line is? You know.
Don't off the top of my head.
I may not always love you. I may not always love you. What? What the hell is that about?
Hey, good point.
Exactly. What a big fuck you.
This whole record is so really... and make no mistake, this was not a Beach Boys album. This is a Brian Wilson recording with instrumentation by Brian Wilson and his brother singing in the background. Brian Wilson is the little Mozart of the 20th century.
There you go. Driven by dopamine and creativity.
And how could I leave it out? Brian Wilson, a sad and terrible victim of mental illness, high dopamine. The mental difficulties that he's had are mental illnesses associated with high dopamine.
That's where I was going next.
We know absolutely that this connection is there. You know, now that's not to say, a lot of people say artists have to suffer. Well, let's not ever entertain that. The idea that we have to be, that mental illness is a price we pay for high creativity. There's lots of creativity to be had without suffering that way. And we tend to romanticize it, but the people who tend to romanticize it are the people who haven't suffered from it.
Right.
So Brian Wilson paid a heavy price for what he did, but he could have done it with some medication, and I think we'd all been all right.
That's absolutely perfect segue to my next question, and then we'll start to wrap it up just to respect your time. So, now how does dopamine dysregulation contribute to that mental health or these mental health conditions like ADHD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and the like? And how can those be addressed through dopamine regulation?
Sure. I will offer this caveat, which I have to offer over and over. I am not a physician. Sure. I'm not a trained neuroscientist. I'm a writer with a little more than layman's knowledge. I've studied this and I've worked closely with an expert. So with that in hand, I'll tell you that the conditions you describe are in the main conditions of high dopamine. You can imagine how if I had high dopamine in everything and I wanted something new all the time, I would be easily distracted. I would leap from thing to thing. So in its worst case, I might speak in word salad, as Will said a moment ago. Use that phrase, word salad. If you, as a presentation I do about Molecule of More, where I play some videos of people who are suffering from this, and it'll be something like a guy says, for instance, he says, I I was hearing this sound I needed to do something about, so I had to call somebody. Who did I call? I called Ghostbusters. No, that's just a joke. I didn't call Ghostbusters. I called the mental health hotline. The line. I follow that line over there to, you see what I mean? It just, because it's something new. That's a high dopamine condition. Low dopamine gives you a little bit of the old sling blade, you know? Just sitting there, you're kind of staring at the window. These are, again, broad strokes, but there are many compounds that can adjust particular pathways, and a lot of times you'll hear, Well, for instance, we have if you're familiar with antidepressants, and I know you two are. No, if you're familiar with that, SSRI, the one I take is a little different. But you hear SSRI, and that stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
Right. And
serotonin is the way any neurotransmitter works. Is there's a broadcaster on one side of the synapse being the gap between a nerve, and the receptor on the other side. And these SSRIs cause the neurotransmitter to come across, and instead of being absorbed into the other side, it inhibits reuptake. So it makes it stay. It can't drain out on the side and keep coming back over and over and over. And so dopamine is another chemical subject to inhibition by reuptake inhibition, and that's how we deal with it.
Nice.
Yeah, I've just thought two things, Mike. Before we go, I would love if you'd speak as a speechwriter. How does your use of the knowledge of dopamine, to emotionally influence the message you're trying to convey or the opinion that you're trying to sway? Like, this knowledge that you have of dopamine, how does it inform, what you're trying to write or who you're writing for? I know you write for political entities as well, so. I'm just curious, because I know it definitely have a sway in the way I'm writing for sure.
Well, it's less about thinking explicitly about dopamine, quadopamine, and more about the things we've talked about how people behave, which happen to be the result of, in some parts, in some parts of due to dopamine. So I think about, I'll tell you, I think about this James Woods Family Guy thing a lot. The idea is, if you want to be a speechwriter, here's really what you need to know. If you know nothing else, this will get you really far. And I've been doing it 25 years. And that is, listening is hard. We're having a good time. We're talking. If we need to pause, we could pause. We could do what we need to do. We can swear. We can get up and go. We can do what we want. But if you're listening to a speech, somebody's sitting there like this with their legs crossed going, and what they want, I wish he'd talk about taters.
Everybody who doesn't know Sling Blade is missing that joke. Billy Bob Thornton, fantastic. One of Billy Bob Thornton's best roles.
You ought not talk to that boy that way. When you're sitting in the audience for a speech, what you mostly want is for it to be fucking over. And as a speechwriter, that's the first thing I have in my mind is don't get up there and it's really great to be here. This reminds me of a story of my son who once went to Outback. I was like, shut up. Just tell me what I need to know. The first thing I ask my speechwriting clients is, do we really need to do this? I swear, that's what I say. Do you need a speech? Couldn't you just send an email? Is that possible? Well, this is what we've always done. We've always done this thing. Maybe it's time to stop. You got to be a pure empath and go, is this really something somebody's going to sit there and listen to? And if you find another way to deliver it, do so. Now, let's say we're already to the point where you got to deliver a speech. You got to write a speech. Well, what you want to do is find a way to keep them hooked at every turn. That doesn't mean necessarily tell a bunch of jokes, but it does mean do not indulge in things that cannot be kept in the brain for more than a couple of seconds. That's why we don't dig into big detailed analysis with numbers in a speech, because we can't manipulate those in our brain. We want to give somebody something they can immediately understand, get a feeling from. As Bob Dylan said, you may know what you want, but I know what you need. They want to be entertained. They want to be pulled along. So let us do that. Let us, as speechwriters, continue the constant desire for more with everything we do in the speech. And I teach a lot of speech writing, and so there are many structures that advance this idea. There are some particular techniques. We especially rely on the here and now qualities of words. The fact that we choose, assonant phrases, dissonant phrases, consonant phrases, that we choose alliterative phrases, that we do certain kinds of expansions as phrases move forward. So anyway, yeah, it's an art. Plus, my dad was a preacher, as I said, and he was a fantastic speaker. And so a lot of this I learned by just having it absorbed. So.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of what we said earlier about dangling the carrot, and you're constantly trying to fill that space between the carrot, and where you're trying to take them all the time, keep them engaged, right? It's really, it's hard to, I do a lot of public speaking and teaching and stuff like that. And it's just like hard to keep them sometimes your class or your audience engaged. And it's just like knowing, these little short snippets and just kind of keep, the energy flowing in that direction, and you can cook them for a really long time. Last I have,
if you're a speaker, you're up there for them, not for yourself.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. What are you giving? Right.
I interrupted. You were saying. Yeah.
No worries. You mentioned here and now, and this is the first time we actually mentioned it, and it's towards the end of the show. And this is a mindfulness podcast, right? About mindfulness. So, and to kind of, what do you know, or did you talk about mindfulness or meditation as a way to kind of to limit or kind of subdue some of this molecule of more, the dopamine that flushes our system on a regular basis? Is that something that's helpful to kind of get us into the here and now so we can be happy, right, and really enjoy the moment instead of always trying to look forward into the future?
Well, let's take this in two parts. Number one is, are there things we can do to harness our dopaminergic urges to limit our sort of panicky leaping from thing to thing? And the answer is a solid yes. One of the things we can do is accept that we are easily amused, easily drawn forward by multitudes of things. And one of the things I do, for instance, is I have a list. I don't have a to-do list. I have a daily list. Even the things I do every day. I practice French. I practice my guitar. I have a couple of calls I have to make each day. And on my calendar, I have those things, and I check them off as I do it. So I get the anticipation. Ooh, I'm going to finish that. And then I change the color to green. It means it's done. And so I schedule my day. Some people schedule it down to the minute. I just make a list. Oh, there you go. There you go. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. So that's a great way. Yeah, that's awesome. That's the kind of thing that we can do to accept our dopaminergic nature. And I hate how holy that sounds. It's not what I mean. It's just, It's sort of like you got a broken arm, you got to deal with it. You got a highly dopaminergic nature, you got to fucking deal with it. And that's one way to do it. On the here and now part about mindfulness, about meditation, about simply being still. If you treat that as a dopaminergic goal, every day I shall sit still for a moment. Every day I shall sit still. And the fact that I even tried it. Like on my calendar, for instance, it says 15 minutes guitar every day. I do more than 15 minutes, but if I'm getting to the end of the day and I haven't gotten to it, I say, you better do your 15, at least 15. If you want to do more, that's fine, but you got to do it. So this mindfulness idea, this idea of being still and knowing. And you'll be more successful, and you guys know so much more about this than I do. All I'll say is, if you have a method to be quiet, if you have a method to be still, if it's, as you were doing early on, John, you said, let's breathe in, let's hold it, let's let it go. It's out, empty, hold it. One of the things I do when I try to go to sleep is I go down my body and I think, is the top of my head relaxed? This relaxed? This relaxed? And I feel it, and it distracts me, and I go to sleep. But it's a way to be in the here and now. So I think what you gentlemen do is of great value, especially to those people, I think especially men, who feel a great pressure from some source to go, impress me again. And it has to be impress me again, because everybody's forgotten what you did before, or at least you believe it. Oh, what have you done for me lately? So a mindful man is a man in control of himself. That's a good thing.
It's the horse walking down the hill slowly.
Yeah. I mean, I like how you put it on your calendar, and just to look forward to being still, to being in the here and now. It's just a way of just manipulating our dopamine, if you will, in order to find those moments and hopefully, just learn to control yourself more, and maybe get into more of the controlled dopamine side and be more calculated and more strategic with how you're doing things, instead of just running around like, chicken with your head cut off, always looking for the next thing. Yeah, I love it. It's great. I mean, also as far as men, you talk about men.
Right.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
exactly. Arriving.
We treat things like we treat the things we want to do like a job, and that's how we succeed at them. I mean, what more is there to say except we do the things we set our minds to, and it's a good feeling that we will become accustomed to. I don't like the phrase, teach yourself, learn to. I say create habits for yourself, and you'll begin to find first pleasure in the habits, and then another kind of dopaminergic urge to maintain the habit, to maintain the string of things, which is another topic which no doubt you guys are quite familiar with. So, that's what I'd say.
Awesome.
Appreciate your time. Yeah, this has been wonderful, sure. Mike. Thank you.
For our
you guys are doing great things.
Oh, thank you, Mike. And for our watchers and listeners, how can they find you? I mean, I know we've mentioned the name of the book, and I hope that they pick that book up to learn so much more about dopamine than we only covered a little tiny fraction of what's covered in the book. But how else can they find out about you and what else you do?
I'm at Walmart a lot. So if you want to go to I'm probably at your Walmart. You can visit my website, MikeLongOnline.com, MikeLongOnline.com. If you say, fuck that guy, I just want to read out the book, you can go to moleculeofmore.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great. And we'd love to have you back for your next book, Mike. What's you give us a little preview of what you're writing, maybe?
Absolutely. The Molecule of More is an idea book. It's about how the thing works. The sequel, which has a title, which we're kind of holding for now, but the title of the sequel, The Molecule of More, is about how to put this to work in your life, point by point by point.
Oh, that's right in line with what we do, right? I mean, being mindful, being strategic, like you talked about, checking the boxes. So let's have you come back whenever that gets published. We'd love to talk to you about that. It sounds like it'd be very informative for our audience for sure.
I'll take it. I like talking to you guys. We need to just hang out.
I just want to know.
I agree. I totally fucking agree. We'd have a great time.
Error was is there an error in what you expected from this show versus what you actually got out of it? That's and was it a positive error or not?
I'd say this was a here and now experience for me.
There we go.
It's very. I know what to expect. I think, and the surprise is that I'm not even surprised because once people are made to feel comfortable to be able to be themselves, and you told me right off, do what you're going to do, Mike. I was like, oh, if that's what you want, okay. You guys are here and now, guys. I think it'd be fun to just talk about stuff and get you to explain sports to me, which I don't understand, which I gather you probably could do. Something like that, Could talk about Scotch. I'm sure we think of something.
I'm a fan.
We talk about everything around with Scotch.
There we go. Well, we'll wrap this up with a practice here shortly, but for our audience, just in case you don't get the closing practice, if you got something out of the show, which I know you did, share it with whomever you think could listen or could get something from this. Again, hint, that's everyone. So share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and we would love you to subscribe and give us a review. So thank you for that, and thank you for tuning in, whether that's live or in the podcast version later. So Will, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap this up in a pretty bow and be done.
Yeah, we're just going to do a few breaths, everybody, just to kind of this has been a very exciting conversation. So we're just going to calm it all down, ground ourselves so we can step in to the here and now of the next moment by just taking a few breaths right now. So we'll just start with a nice little exhale out your mouth. Let it go. Try to get really empty and just really relax into your body. Take a big, giant inhale. Keep going big. Feel like a giant balloon in your torso and let it go out your mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Good. Let's just do a couple more. In, big breath. Out, easy breath. We'll just do one more. In with peace. Out with stress. And we just want to thank you all, and thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Taking all this time, writing this, like, really, this is such a great book, and it really helped me clear up so much of who I am, how we do things, our society. And I know to everyone that's listening, I really suggest getting to read the book. It's a good read. It's not all sciencey. It's not too poppy. It's just, Mike, you hit it. You and Mike, you and Daniel just hit it right in the middle. And so hope you guys get a chance to check it out and read it. And I think that's it. Anything, Mike, before we go?
Gosh, no. This is fun. Yeah, it's a book about big ideas, but it gets compared most often, I think, to Freakonomics. Feel like that kind of thing, where they tell it. We use George Costanza, for Pete's sake, The Office, Will Ferrell movies. The whole thing is just let's talk about how we live and how we can use that to explain this very useful human concept. So check it out, moleculeofmore.com. I'd love to have you.
There you go. Well, thanks again, Mike. It's been a pleasure. And for our audience, thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, take care.
Peace, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.